You've heard the expression, everyone's a critic. Well, sure, but not everybody is considered a critic's critic. Meet one of the tops in TV criticism next on Brio TV, the podcast. Hi there, I'm Bill Brio, and thanks for joining me. I've known Alan Sepinwall for over 30 years now, mainly through our association with the Television Critics Association, especially over the course of many biannual network press tours we attended in California. Now, as Alan tells me, he was only 22 when he did his first tour, which really surprised me. You know, he walked onto the scene like he owned the place and been doing this for years. Back then, he was working for the New Jersey Star-Ledger, the paper at the end of Tony Soprano's driveway. By the end of that landmark series, he was creator David Chase's favorite TV reporter, granting him a final episode exclusive. It was with shows such as The Sopranos and The Wire that Alan's episode-by-episode approach to, quote, Slate, changed the nature of television criticism. He went on to author several books, including The Revolution Was Televised, The Cops, Crooks, Slingers, and Slayers Who Changed TV Drama Forever, which really took off after a big review in the New York Times. In this conversation, we talk about Alan's tenure at Rolling Stone as their TV critic, his latest book, a very thoughtful look at the great Rod Serling of Twilight Zone fame, and his well-read What's Alan Watching blog, as well as brand new podcast, TV is Good. And yes, we talk about the Knicks winning the NBA title. So here he is, Alan Sepinwall.
Hey, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, it's good to see a friendly face. It's been a while. And
Yes.
We don't get to gather anymore at the Television Critics Association.
Yep.
So it's at least we can keep in touch this way.
Yes.
But do you miss that circus, Alan? Is that something you think about ever, or is it you've got so many things going on?
No, I miss it so much. I was at the ATX TV Festival in Austin a few weeks ago, and there was a good number of TCA people there. Andy Daynert, who's the current president, was there. Mo Ryan, Dan Feinberg, Melanie McFarland, a bunch of different people. So it was definitely not remotely on the scale of what we used to have, where it's like 200 of us,
right,
all in this ballroom. And I miss that. I miss it was sort of like, TV summer camp or something, where it was just you see your friends twice a year and you have this very intense experience. I probably spent like 2 or 3 years total of my life at TCA, which is a lot.
Yeah. And it's not like we're staying at the Motel 6, right? It was always pretty nice. We would be in Pasadena. We'd be shuttled to sets and tours and things. It was, I remember once way back, Brandon Tartikoff, remember him? A bunch of us sort of glommed onto him when he made a comeback on the tour. And he looked at us and said, "Oh, there they are, America's guests."
Wow.
There's a title of a book on the press tour, it was very funny, but certainly a privilege to have attended. And, where else could you have gone and had like Walter Cronkite at 10 o'clock and then Mickey Dolenz at 11 and Ken Burns at it was crazy. The
the access, like the ability that you had, which even when they revived the tour, after like the worst of COVID, they got rid of my favorite aspect of it, which is the press conferences end, and you can go and walk up on the stage and just have a conversation with the panelists in a more intimate setting, and that just went bye due to social distancing and everything else. It's the fact that all of these network executives had to come out and answer for their failures or just give insight into what they were doing. No other industry has that. Like, there's no movie equivalent where like reporters can interrogate the head of a studio. Like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And it's a miracle it existed as long as it did. I'm so lucky that I got to be there for, 20 years or so of it.
Yeah, you're right. If you were a Ford dealer, you couldn't go up to the head of Ford and say, "What the heck were you thinking?" I always, this is a dated reference. I would tell people who are new on the tour, you haven't been on the tour since you until you've been on a scrum with Les Moonves. You know,
Yep.
it was, there was something, there was tension in the air in those moments. Anyway, great to see you. And my goodness, Alan, you're so busy. I tried to keep up with some of your stuff. You kindly sent me an advance on your latest book on Rod Serling, which I've started to read, and you've taken a great approach with it. Folks should know this is available coming out in October, but you can pre-order now. Is that right?
Yes, you can pre-order it now. If you go to my site, whatsalanwatching.com, if you look at any of my social media, just look for Sepinwall pretty much anywhere. It's a relatively unique name. You will find it. It's available from Hachette Books. It'll be out October 13th. It is called Serling, A Journey into the Twilight Zone with TV's First Visionary. And I spent a couple of years working on it. But you were going to say, Bill.
Yeah, no, I loved how your approach is sort of, and the little I know about Rod Serling, I would go to Syracuse. I collect 16 millimeter film, and they would have this wonderful Cinefest for years and years there. And they had some folks there who were sort of Serling experts. One of them in particular, I can't remember his name, but he would talk and show rare film that Serling had made in the 50s. And there was this tug of war between where is his hometown really? Is it Syracuse or is it Binghamton? Is that
Binghamton is where he was born, and he was, I think, born in Syracuse but grew up in Binghamton. Like I think literally just in a hospital in Syracuse.
Yeah, but
I can check right now. In fact, while we're talking.
No, I read your book. That's what it says. He was born in a hospital in.
Yes. But the family was living, I think, in either Rochester or Binghamton at the time.
Right. But what I learned about him from those talks at Syracuse was his army days, were quite harrowing. Like he was in the middle of war, like he saw horrible things, and how that influenced his later career as a TV writer, and then other experiences like that. So what your book does is it walks you through his life and his experiences. And as you point out, a lot of what he wrote, it wasn't really just purely out of his imagination. It was based on his life story and things that had happened to him and how he took those kernels and spun them into great episodes, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I found when I started, I knew of Serling. I knew the Twilight Zone. I was not an expert on either. This was a new experience for me. Usually when I write a book, it's something where I already know the subject front to back. This was someone came to me and says, "Do you want to write a Rod Serling book?" Oh. And it gave me the excuse to immerse myself in it because you know as well as I do, there's so much current TV. It's very hard to justify going back and watching really old stuff unless you have a professional reason. And suddenly I did. Yeah. I was able to watch every episode of The Twilight Zone, many of which I'd seen, many of which I hadn't. I was able to watch every episode of Night Gallery that he wrote. I was able to go back and watch as much of his 1950s teleplays as I could. And the thing you start learning when you're watching all of this in a concentrated period and when you're studying the story of his life in this concentrated period is, it was so autobiographical, so much of what he did, including like things that just seem completely supernatural and disconnected from him. And also just the way in which characters talk. And he would confess to this, more than anyone else. It's like every character I write sounds like me, more or less. It was just sort of, he was putting himself into all of that. And so as I started outlining the book, I realized, hey, I can just frame every chapter as, here's a Twilight Zone episode that's reflective of this moment in his life. Here's a teleplay that's reflective of this moment in his life. Here's a Night Gallery episode. Yeah. And that way it sort of helps provide context for what's happening and hopefully also just makes it entertaining for people when I'm telling parts of the less famous parts of the story, like before Twilight Zone. Well,
and you could say that true of Aaron Sorkin too, I think, or, Chuck Lorre, maybe, like a lot of times great writers, they're writing a lot of stuff. A lot of it's coming from them and it's in their voice. It's pretty hard to do it the other way around. But did you happen to read Mark Duisiak, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Dawidziak. His Everything I Know I Learned from the Twilight Zone.
Yes, I did. Mark is on the board of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation. He was an enormous help in doing this book. He introduced me to lots and lots of people who I spoke to. And so I read that. I read basically everything. There's a lot of books already about Serling. Some are very focusing on very specific things like the Twilight Zone or Night Gallery. Some of them are more broad views. There's a couple of straight biographies that were written in the early 90s. So I devoured all of that, but then I talked to as many people as I could. I went back and I looked at as much primary material as I could. So he saved all of his correspondence. He saved lots and lots of stuff. He gave so many interviews like Sorkin. He just loved to talk to the media. So there's lots of newspaper clippings. There's lots of archival, TV interviews on YouTube, that kind of thing. So there was a lot to get through. But it was great, including Mark's book.
And would your favorite episode of a Twilight Zone would it be Walking Distance? I know you write about that one, but
I really like Walking Distance. That's one of my favorites. I think to me the Twilight Zone episode is The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. That just has everything that the Twilight Zone did, all wrapped in one package. It's because the thing is, he was basically Aaron Sorkin before Aaron Sorkin. In the 50s, he wrote these sociologically conscious teleplays. Yeah. And at a certain point, they stopped letting him do it. The censors and the sponsors are like, we don't want you writing about racism. We don't want you writing about this, about that. And he realized, hey, if I disguise this stuff in parable and metaphor in the science fiction show, I can get my points across. So that's an episode about McCarthyism and Cold War paranoia. Yeah. But it's involving alien invaders conquering, one random suburban block.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I like Time Enough at Last. Is that the Burgess Meredith one?
Such a good one.
Yeah,
such
I like
a good
that
one
a lot. But I like in your book too how you talk about Mike Wallace. You bring up this great interview in the mid 50s, where he's sort of grilling him, saying, "What are you doing this stupid TV show for? You're walking away from important stuff, and I'm really disappointed in you," kind of thing.
It's astonishing to watch this. He literally says, so for all intents and purposes, for the foreseeable future, you've given up on writing anything important for television.
Right. Yeah.
And he believes it so much, and we, with the benefit of hindsight, we know how wrong he was. And
right. Yeah.
I watched that. I'm like, okay, this is how you start the book, is with this insane interview.
It is a smart way to start the book. We'll be right back with author and TV critic Alan Sepinwall right after this. Hey kids, time once again to check in with Emily Gagne at Hollywood Suite. Emily, what do you got for us this month?
Well, Bill, it's Pride Month, so we've got some great queer films from yesterday to today, including one of my personal favorites, Brokeback Mountain. We also have But I'm a Cheerleader. We also have Velvet Goldmine. And we have Dog Day Afternoon, which I think people forget is a queer film.
Great film with Al Pacino for sure. And look, that's all good. That's it. Look, those are great films. This has to be expensive. It must. I don't know if I can afford. How much does it cost to see this?
Well, we're around $6 a month wherever you subscribe, Bill.
$6. I paid that to see Dog Day Afternoon in 1974. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you're getting these movies that I mentioned plus hundreds more for the price of a movie ticket in what it was, 1975.
75. Well, there you go. Thank you, Emily, for that report. We'll talk to you again next month.
Thanks, Bill.
And we're back with Alan Sepinwall. Your reputation, you've written some great books about contemporary television, about, of course, The Sopranos, first and foremost. The Revolution is televised. Look, I got two different colored copies of.
Oh, bless your heart, Bill.
But you were the guy writing for the paper that Tony Soprano would find at the bottom of his driveway in New Jersey, and and jumped on shows like The Wire and things that were very contemporary. So to go back and do something that was made 50, 60 years ago is a departure. But Alan, I don't know about you, I'm more and more fascinated by that decade, like the decade before me, really, in TV. I find really intriguing. There was so many rich things happening when there was 2 or 3 networks, like it was incredible, really.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I found, and it's always the concern when you write a book about a show, or in this case about a person who made a bunch of shows, is you go back and you look at the work and it hasn't necessarily aged that well. And suddenly you've committed to celebrate something that if people actually watch, I don't see the big deal. And while there's definitely Twilight Zone episodes that are not great, and some of them are frankly awful, and he would cop to that too, so much of it is incredible, and so much of it is aged really well because he was way ahead of the curve in terms of the things he was writing about. There's episodes about AI in there, episodes about creeping fascism, all of that. But the other thing that's interesting that I was able to do, in part because I've been covering TV as long as I have, and I've made as many connections as I have, was I was able to talk to lots and lots of people in film and television who were influenced by Rod, J.J. Abrams, Guillermo del Toro, Ben Stiller, all kinds of people who spoke very openly and eloquently about like how the things that they do would not have been possible without him. And so, even though it was me going back to something before I was born, and well before anything I've generally written about, it's so tied into what we do now and what we see now that like it made perfect sense to me.
How did Ben Stiller relate to the Twilight Zone? What was the insight there?
No, I mean, he loves it. He loves, as a director, he was hugely influenced by like the long lenses and other things, but just the sense of mood that it was created. And if you look at something like Severance, that is basically like The Office meets the Twilight Zone. It's an extended Twilight Zone episode. There's an episode from the second season that has the same name as the Twilight Zone episode where the mannequins come to life at the department store. And I believe they quote dialogue from that episode within it.
Did you ever ride the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror at Walt Disney World?
I didn't, because when we would go to Disney World when I was younger, I was kind of a fraidy cat, and I didn't want to do it. And then I started writing this book, and I wanted to go down there, and I just wasn't able to. My family, we actually wound up going to Disneyland in the course of this trip, but the Tower of Terror there has been converted into a Guardians of the Galaxy themed ride. So I've watched YouTube videos of people going through it, and I spoke to like the Disney Imagineer who helped design it, and I spoke to the voice actor who plays Serling.
Wow!
In the ride, I spoke to so many people. Bill, wow. It's just James Burrows, like the Hall of Fame TV sitcom director. Very early in his career, he directed very briefly a play based on, what was it now? It's some like TV movie Serling wrote late in his career. The name is escaping me right now. They did a production in San Diego. James Burrows directed it. Wow. And so I talked to James Burrows for like a half an hour. There's one quote from him in the book because I had just an overabundance of things. But I tried to talk to everybody because the tendrils of Serling go everywhere.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good for you. That's exciting. I did ride the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. It's too bad it's not up and running. It would have blown your mind how cool it was, just that in this decade you've got a ride dedicated to a show 60 years ago, and they sort of assumed everybody knew what it was, and that's unique, isn't it, in terms of television? It'd be hard to do that with pretty much any other show.
It would be. And I mean, there's a lot of people who I've heard from who like that is their introduction to Twilight Zone. Like parents take their kids on the ride and they'll say, yeah, this was a TV show and that guy was the host and it was so creepy.
It's crazy. Alan, I've always admired too, your enthusiasm for television, which seems to be still just percolating. You've got so much going on, a new podcast. I listened to an episode there. And you're so into TV today. But boy, don't you find it exhausting?
It's totally exhausting, Bill. I'm tired all the time. I'm tired. Like, we're talking at 10:15 a.m. and I just want to take a nap. There's a lot of TV. But I mean, the thing about it is, because there's so much TV, you don't do this job unless you love it. You know that.
Yeah.
There's so many like better ways to make a living than doing this. So you really have to have a passion for it. Because it does become all consuming, especially when you try to cover as much as I do in the books at What's Alan Watching on the New TV is Good podcast. So yeah, I'm trying to keep a finger in everything as much as I can.
I love the name of it. TV is Good. Like that says it right there. So congrats on that. I like.
Thank you. Do you remember this was like the ABC marketing campaign from like 97 or 98 where they had the yellow background and the black text.
I do.
And it
remember
said TV is Good. And I remember at that TCA, we were all making fun of it.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, like they were right. TV is good. Let's celebrate it. Let's own that.
Why? You know how I remember that? I kept some stuff for when they did that Beatles anthology on ABC, and it was in that yellow with the black type. Yeah, no, that stands out. But it's a great title for your podcast. And, you are talking with, now let me make sure I get Catherine's name, Catherine Van Erdonk?
Van Arendonk. It is a long Dutch name.
Okay. Well, the two of you, she also is a TV critic. She's a little bit younger. And I think it was smart for you to pair with a woman, with someone who's a bit younger, right? I mean, if it was just you and I talking, and I'm older than you are, so that wouldn't work either. But if you're both the same age and you're the same guy, it's not as interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, for years I did a podcast called Firewall and Iceberg with our pal Dan Feinberg, who I mentioned before, and we're basically like the same age and background and everything else, but we were close enough friends that I think it worked despite that. But definitely when I started thinking about this, I said, look, nobody needs another podcast with two middle-aged white guys, talking to each other. Yeah. Catherine lives 5 minutes from me. Amazing. We're very close. One of my kids babysits for her kids. We talk about TV all the time. It just made sense, and she has a different perspective from me. And while we like a lot of the same shows, there's shows that she loves that I don't, and vice versa. And so that creates an interesting tension too. Yeah,
it's smart. And you guys, how did your one of your kids end up babysitting one of her kids? That's pretty good.
Just because I'm older than her, so I have an older kid, and so we just sort of know each other. And Catherine, one time, like I guess her regular babysitter was not available, and she said, "Could you do it?" Sure, and so she does.
And is that more? And the premise of it, I'll generalize, is you take a current show, something that's really really popular right now, and then you compare it with something from the past and talk about how they're both good, and way to spoil Gilligan's Island for me, by the way. Your latest episode.
we did an episode this week where it's about Widow's Bay and Gilligan's Island. Yeah. And I mean, originally my idea was just let's do a new show and an old show. And Catherine, said, but let's try to link them as often as we can. And so when we decided we would do Widow's Bay, because this is like kind of the water cooler hit of the spring, we're like, well, what can we pair it with? And as a joke, I said Gilligan's Island. And Catherine said, no, let's definitely do that. That makes sense, because that way you can look at like how a serialized contemporary show deals with like this idea that then a 1960s episodic show does the same thing, which is terrible things keep happening to us over and over, but then the story resets and you begin again, and Gilligan just has to, accept that he's never getting off the island. And it's a really bonkers discussion, because Gilligan's Island is the most ridiculous show that's ever been on television.
But isn't there's a comparison, sort of somebody suggested that really every television show is Gilligan's Island? In a way.
Yeah, because there's you've got The Wire and you've got Breaking Bad and you've got some others where characters significantly change over the course of it. But TV, defaults to, we're going to keep giving you the thing that you like. Even if the story is more serialized than Gilligan, the primary mode of TV is definitely that. So it's the idea of like, we're going to get off the island. Nope. I put a rabbit's foot in the robot, and so I erase the robot's memory, and therefore, when it gets back to the mainland, no one will know where it was.
Yeah, it's fun that you compare them, and my goodness, Matthew Rhys, right? He's just so talented and very very funny. And as you point out in this podcast, when you talk to him in person, we both had that privilege briefly, but he's just charming and witty. Really, someone you could talk to, you'd want to sit next to at a dinner, right? He's a very interesting guy, and he plays a lot of dark characters.
He's like the sad sack. He's Mr. Sad Sack. They even put him in like Americans, Perry Mason. They put him in the Mr. Rogers movie, where the whole point is he's such a broken man that he needs Mr. Rogers to heal him, and he's really good at it. But the great thing about Widow's Bay is suddenly it's like, oh, he's funny. Let's let him be funny. Let's let him, have a drug trip and be ridiculous. And he's so good.
They've cast the one real comedian, Stephen Root, in that series as the straight man, basically.
Yes. It's so counterintuitive, and yet it works perfectly. I'm really enjoying it.
What else? Your famous What's Alan Watching is the site where people can find all your connection to everything you're doing. But what else are you watching right now? I mean, here we are in June of 2026.
Yeah.
What's hot on your plate right now?
So there's the new season of, it used to be called Interview with the Vampire. They renamed it this year, The Vampire Lestat. And that's a show that I had heard good things about for a couple of years and never got around to. And again, because I'm doing this podcast, Catherine said, we should catch up on this and do that. And I loved it. Like, I'm not automatically Mr. Vampire, Mr. Supernatural Romance, all of that. But it's so imaginative. The performances are really good. This new season, now that they've renamed it Vampire Lestat, is incredibly funny. So I'm really enjoying that a lot. And I'm just, diving into new things, figuring out stuff. And, Bill, as well as I do, when people come to you when you do this job and say, what should I be watching now? We're watching so many things that immediately it all like falls out of your head. So I know that because you've mentioned Widow's Bay and because I published a Vampire Lestat recap last night, those are instantly in my head. I would have to go and look up some of the other things because it's a lot.
I mentioned to my wife, Sandra, here, I was going to be talking to you. And I said, what did we watch last week that was a 2-part that I haven't gotten around to writing about, and neither of us could remember what it was, because you're right, you get blurred. I tend to watch now a lot of documentaries. I really enjoy the Martin Short one. I really was impressed with. But even, ones on Jeff Ross and Hulk Hogan and, there's a lot of variety there. And I don't know if did you catch Dan Levy's Big Mistakes?
I did. I thought I liked parts of it. I'm not sure other parts worked. I think the actress who plays his sister is wonderful. She was definitely the discovery of that for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know that all of it necessarily worked. I think it's really frantic at times, and at other times, I don't know. I appreciate that he didn't want to just do Schitt's Creek again and just do like, hey, it's all the nicest people in the world. And I like when people branch out. I'm not sure this one was for me.
Yeah, it took 4 episodes to get going, I thought, which was not great now. And there was a lot of 2 people sort of yelling at each other.
Yes, a lot of that.
But I thought if you were stuck with it that far, you get into it. Did you happen to see Heated Rivalry, which was the big?
Yes, I did. And that's, I'm half Canadian, so
that's right.
Hockey fandom is dormant within my genes, and so again, when romance is
the tagline for Heated Rivalry, that the hockey fandom is dormant in my genes.
Do you remember there was a 90s show called Power Play that was like about a fictional team in Hamilton, and it aired twice on UPN, and it was like the lowest rated show in the history of American broadcast TV, and they canceled it, but the theme song was like, Stompin' Tom Connor's hockey song.
Wow.
So when they did this, and it suddenly became a phenomenon, I'm like, okay, let me at least check it out and see. And Connor Story, who plays the Russian, is incredible. And the romance is really good. So I thought that was very well made, and I understand why it became the phenomenon that it did.
Yeah, but again, a show I thought that took a couple episodes to hit its mark, story-wise, But boy, they just had the upfronts in Canada a couple of weeks ago here, and CTV's was like 90 minutes of Heated Rivalry clips. They were pretty happy about how that worked out. It is hard keeping up, and I find my default is to look for comedy shows first, I find that getting harder and harder. Like it's not to find something really funny. I've been watching Hacks and Shrinking and Running Point.
Yeah.
But an out and out broad comedy is harder to find.
My Matt Zoller Seitz, who I worked with at the Star Ledger and I've co-written a couple of books with, he always used to refer to these as like comedies in theory, where it's a half an hour and you have funny people saying things that kind of sound like jokes but aren't really, and it's mostly just you call it a comedy because of the length.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those, and they're sort of clever and nice and fun, and I enjoy a bunch of them. But in terms of like finding hardcore laughs, that's harder. I've definitely laughed more at Widow's Bay, which is a comedy/horror show, than I have at a lot of just overt comedies these days. Yeah. Because I think one of the things that happens is when you're making it, single camera, which is you're shot on film, not in front of an audience, I generally prefer that kind of comedy, but it also means if you're not don't have an audience in front of you that you're trying to make laugh, you can ease back a little bit and not worry about it as much. And so sometimes it's like, all right, well, we didn't really put jokes in here because that's not what we wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. No, I find I often have to go to YouTube and look back or see clips on my phone of Buddy Hackett telling jokes on the Tonight Show to laugh out loud. Like, it's, yeah, I'm older, so maybe that's where my clock is set or whatever the expression is. What's Alan watching? Well, find out after this short break. What's new this summer on Paramount Plus Canada? Well, get set to be all shook up by epic Elvis Presley in concert, which will make its streaming debut July 24th exclusively on Paramount Plus in Canada. The film is already running on Paramount Plus in the U.S. From director Baz Luhrmann, this film invites audiences to experience Elvis Presley like never before, featuring long-lost footage from his legendary Las Vegas residency in the 1970s, alongside rare 16mm footage from Elvis on tour and treasured 8mm film from the Graceland archive. This footage was restored by Peter Jackson, who worked miracles bringing the Beatles' Let It Be footage back to life for Get Back. Epic has also garnered widespread critical acclaim, with Vogue calling it, quote, a burst of concert film adrenaline, and Time praising its profoundly intimate approach. Check it out this summer exclusively on Paramount Plus. And we're back. We're being asked now, the TCA is still around. They're not doing live tours, but the critics are being asked to come up and vote on the TCA Awards. What is the show of the program of the year? Do you have a couple of candidates in your head that you would single out that you've enjoyed in the season just ending?
Hang on one second. I have not voted yet, so I've looked at the awards, but I just give me 1 second to check.
I am springing this on you. I didn't.
Yes, and that's okay. I can look at it right now. Program of the year.
I'll throw a show out to you. One title, yes. And Pluribus stands out.
Oh no, Pluribus. Looking at the nominees now, to me, it's Pluribus. There's another TCA member, in fact, asked me this the other day. It's sort of like, well, Pluribus is the best show, but it hasn't had as much cultural impact as something like Heated Rivalry. And I think if you go and you look at the TCA bylaws, cultural impact is referenced.
Yeah.
I've always looked at it, though, as what's the best show.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the Baseball Hall of Fame has the character clause, and some people pay attention to that, and some are like, no, I'm just going to vote for the best players. For me, it's the best thing. And I go back to like 20 years ago, we gave Program of the Year to the first season of Heroes instead of the fourth season of The Wire. Yeah. And The Wire season 4 is like one of the great seasons of television ever made.
Yes. Yeah.
But like nobody was watching it at the time, whereas Heroes was a phenomenon. And so looking back, at the time I was annoyed. Looking back, I can kind of see what the thinking was. Yeah. To me, though, it's you should vote for the best show. And so for me, of these nominees, that is easily Pluribus.
It was such a remarkably quiet show, wasn't it? I mean, you really got drawn into it. I loved how Gilligan zigged when everybody zagged. You know, like it was
Vince Gilligan this time, not Gilligan from Gilligan's Island.
You're right, but great performances. It was moving, and you know, it made you think. It was spooky. It was really worked on a lot of levels. So
I watched it. And obviously, I love Vince Gilligan's work. I've written books about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And I watched it, and the feeling I started to have, the way I describe it is it's sort of like you've only been allowed to eat froyo for a few years. Like, that's your only dessert. And there's really good froyo, and you're enjoying it. And then one day someone hands you like a bowl of gourmet ice cream, and you go, oh, that's what this is supposed to taste like. Yeah. There had been a lot of good TV, like great TV in the years leading up to Pluribus, you know, and yet when I watched that show, it was the first time in a while where I felt like, oh, I'm in the hands of a master.
Yes.
Like, this is exactly what like TV at its absolute apex can be. It was really, it was so reassuring and delightful.
And original.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Like
I mean, it crashed Apple TV, and this is not like a show based on IP. There wasn't a Pluribus comic book or podcast or novel. Vince just thought this up on his own, and I'm so happy that it's been as big a success as it has.
And it relates back to your book on the Twilight Zone too, right? I mean, obviously.
Yeah, no, I've talked to Vince for the book. Ray Seahorn's character, Carol Sturka. Her first name is from Carol Burnett because Carol Burnett was on Better Call Saul, and she's the most delightful person. But Sturka is a character in an episode of Twilight Zone, Third from the Sun, where you have people like scientists planning to flee their planet, which we think is Earth because ahead of nuclear Armageddon. And then they get in the ship and you find out they're actually flying to Earth, you know, because they're not aware that we're building up the same nuclear stockpile. And that's Vince's favorite episode. And so he gave that name to Ray Seahorn's character, and just Twilight Zone is an enormous influence on him.
Right. Wow. That's interesting. Speaking of Twilight Zone, you know, you famously wrote for the Rolling Stone, and then suddenly they decided to get rid of a bunch of great writers. That must have seemed like a Twilight episode for you. But I was curious, and I love reading you there. I thought that was such a great move on their part when they put you there. And then sadly they decided no. But we work in this crazy business that's very precarious, right? I mean, I've been downsized, I guess is the word, 3 times in 3 different places. And I felt, you know, I worked at TV Guide, Canada and the Toronto Sun for a while, Canadian Press. And I felt after that if I'm going to work for one more asshole, it's going to be me. You know, like, right? So you must feel, as much as it was kind of a drag, it's always is, to lose a great job like that, quite liberated now that you can focus, just take your compass and point it wherever you want and create all this other work, right?
I had a great time at Rolling Stone. I loved the people I worked with, many of whom are still there. And obviously it's like it sucks to be laid off.
Yeah.
But I've also, like, the newspaper, the Star Ledger that I worked for does not exist anymore as a newspaper. It's just a website now.
Yeah.
The 2 websites I wrote for after the Star Ledger, one of them got folded into the other. And pretty much everything I wrote for, I think, 8 years is no longer online anywhere. And I'm sort of trying to get like it back so I can publish it on What's Alan Watching. But like, this is an ephemeral business. The internet sort of tricked us for a while into thinking, oh, everything will exist forever. And it turns out that's not the case.
No.
So yes, it was spooky to be let go. But I knew that I had enough of a following that let me see if I can try to make a living doing this on my own. And I had already set up What's Alan Watching. And people have been very enthusiastic about it. I'm really lucky and I'm really grateful in that sense. And you're right, like, mostly I was not being told to write about stuff I didn't want to when I was at Rolling Stone, but every now and then I was. And there's none of that now. It's just I'm completely free. If I care about this, I will write about it. If I don't, I don't. And hopefully, like, people are interested in hearing the stuff I'm passionate about, either positively or negatively, mostly positively, rather than just, oh, what does Alan think of this hit show that he does not care about? You know, that doesn't really serve anybody. And so I've really stopped doing that. And so that's nice.
And you've always had this very strong brand. You were the first guy I can think of who had like over 100,000 followers on Twitter, or whatever, it's up to 140,000. That's an enormous army of people who might want to read a book about the Twilight Zone. It's a great built-in advantage, and congratulations on amassing that. That's really a tremendous achievement. People follow you, but the other side of it too is you were the critic for the Rolling Stone. So that was cool, right?
I was the critic for Rolling Stone. I was the critic, like you said, at the Star Ledger when the Sopranos was on, which is sort of like being the rock critic in Liverpool, who gets the job right before the Beatles play the Cavern Club.
Right.
It's just I've been in the right place at the right time a number of times.
And even when you became that critic at the Star Ledger, you followed a guy named Jerry.
The great Jerry Krupnik.
A legend on the press tour. He had quite a hairpiece, and often was accompanied by Mrs. Jerry, can't remember, Krupnik, who made good use of the phone in the critics' room on the press tour and booked a lot of things. So they were characters. So you were following a legend, and quickly.
I came to the Ledger. Jerry was a World War II veteran. He had basically been covering TV since TV existed.
Yeah.
So he was nearing retirement when I came there, and I think they were grooming Matt Seitz to take over for Jerry. And then I showed up and Jerry couldn't go to the TCA in summer of '96. And they needed somebody to go. And I'd written some stuff online about TV in college. So they thought, all right, let's send him, see how it goes. And I was a month out of graduating college. I was 22 years old. I was 3 weeks into being at the Ledger, I think, when they said, well, let's go. And they threw me into the deep end of the pool, and I did not drown. And so all these years later, I'm still treading water.
I am astounded. You were 22?
I was 22, and I remember there was a lot of wonderful people at that first press tour, many of whom I'm still friends with. There were also definitely people who were like, what the hell is this child doing here? They did not like me at all.
Well, but that's how it was back then. It was much more competitive and adversarial, right?
Yes,
the rivals,
very adversarial.
If you were, when I got there was four other people for the Canadian papers. They were like, what the hell? Who are you? Get out of my way. And I remember there was a guy, Jim Bodden, who worked for the Toronto Star. And I read Jim when I was, in school, and it was great to see him and introduce myself. And he was very kindly introduced me to this guy and that guy. And he also said, stay away from this guy and don't go near that guy. It was very helpful because it was more elbows up back then when it was all newspapers, right?
Yes, no, absolutely. I remember Gail Schister, who wrote for the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Gail.
A couple times I would see her in the press room and just being friendly. I'm like, hey, Gail, what you working on? And Gail would say, none of your business. So there was that element. There was definitely a generation gap thing, too, because when we started this was just for newspaper and some magazine critics.
Yes.
And at a certain point, it became, well, can people who write for online-only publications come?
Right.
And there would be debates in the TCA business meeting about that. And somebody said, they should start their own tour.
Oh, yeah.
And then someone else very wisely stood up and said, yeah, if they start their own tour, that's the tour that all the networks are going to go to.
Right.
So this is the future. We need to be part of the future.
And, I remember, Tom Jicka, what are these trades doing in here? What, get these. Yeah, it was. And a lot of those guys, too, they were TV critics because they could no longer be the sports guy or the, they got into the business because of Watergate. They wanted to bring, and then we ended up talking about TV. They kind of were a bit resentful and pissy, which was part of the fun.
Yes. No, it's really, it was striking. And definitely, I think as time went on, it became much more full of people who specifically chose this was their beat. This was their dream profession.
Well, and you were at the vanguard of that, really. I thought it was, but I had no idea you were just 22. That's incredible. Good for you.
Well, I'm tall, Bill. So
you are tall, and you walked in and dominated there. So that was part of your charm. Absolutely, Alan.
Yep.
Well, congrats on all of that. And by the way, I meant to start off this by congratulating you on the Knicks victory. I imagine this was an important day for you. I'm surprised you're even talking to me that you're up this early.
I'm sort of floating on air. I'm still somewhat in disbelief. There used to be this website. It was called isAbeVagodaAlive.com. And it was just, you would go there every day and all it would say was yes, until the day that Abe Vigoda passed away. And then it finally said no. And there's a part of me that's thinking, I wanted to start a website that says, did the Knicks win the 2026 NBA title? Yes. Because it's still so unbelievable. And I suffered a lot over the years. And this is the single best sporting event I have ever experienced.
So imagine how Toronto Maple Leaf fans feel. I know. The Knicks are like perennial winners compared to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
They were in the 90s when I really started rooting, but from 2000 to 2020, they were an absolute laughing stock. It was really, I quit fandom at one point and then didn't have the willpower to stay away. And I guess in the long run, that paid off. But
how about that former Raptor,
OG Anunoby?
Yeah,
yes.
Not bad, eh? That was quite a great pick up for them. Boy, Raptors miss him for sure. Well, good for you. The NHL and the NBA are finally done, so we're back to watching real TV shows. Right?
Yeah, the best TV show I watched for the last 2 months was the Knicks in the playoffs.
Right, yeah. So that's how I can't get over how much you can cram in otherwise. It's very impressive. All right, well, we've talked about the Knicks, everything else. One thing I just wanted to quickly get an impression of, if you're up on this news today, is the Roku deal with Fox. Fox is basically, they're looking around, they're seeing Paramount and Warner's lining up and merging, and so they've made a deal for $22 billion. I think Fox has acquired Roku, or trying to, or pending approval. Where's all this leading, Alan? I mean, I guess obviously it's important to have the right distributor, the right place to go to find content on streaming, and Fox needed to get a better driver there, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, they've got Tubi. Tubi's been working relatively well for them, but Fox used to have all these other assets that eventually went to Disney. It's this bizarre thing where we had cable, and cable had many problems, but it was still like, all right, you pay this amount, you get everything, and which means you get both everything that you want, but also you get a bunch of channels that you probably don't, and everybody's viewing is kind of subsidizing everybody else's viewing. And then Netflix comes along and there's Hulu and it starts disrupting, and everyone's like, okay, I will just subscribe to this one thing and that'll be fine. And at a certain point you realize, no, I need to subscribe to 6, 7, 8 different streamers. If you follow baseball, you need like a half a dozen different subscriptions to see every game your team plays. Basketball is kind of becoming that way too. And suddenly it's like, oh, well, maybe if you bundle your streamers, and it's basically, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money to recreate the cable bundle. It's really hilarious. And I'm going to be curious to see, like, on the one hand, a lot of people have Roku devices, and so it makes a lot of sense for Fox to want to just make sure that, like, Tubi is the first thing that everybody sees when they open it up. And I assume they will absorb whatever the original programming that Roku's been making for Roku Channel. But at the same time, if there's like going to be this much consolidation, that's scary. I don't like the idea of like 4 billionaires like deciding everything about what we do and don't watch. That's not good.
Yeah, and certainly that's going to be the case with the Paramount and Warner's. It seems to contradict every rule of ownership. Certainly, in Canada, it's going to have an impact. Crave here is the main streaming service, and it relies a lot on HBO programming, and I'm sure those deals will end and not be renewed because Warner's will want to keep that on their own service, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting for sure, but you're right. It's a little bit, but it's just go big or get home, and it's certainly sending a chill up here in Canada for sure.
It's not the best. I mentioned there's a lot of stuff happening in my country that are sending a chill up to Canada right now. So
I guess, I'd miss that.
I am technically a Canadian citizen, so
we're happy to have you, sir. And this is your dad was from Canada, is that?
Yeah, my dad's whole family were from Montreal. They were Anglos in Montreal, and most of them still live there. But he moved to the States after college.
Do you visit much? Do you get up to see family, relatives?
Yeah. I was up there, I think last summer for a family gathering, wandered around Monkland. It's always a nice reassuring place to go.
Yeah. Pretty good places to eat. You want Portuguese chicken. You got pretty good Portuguese chicken.
Oh, yeah.
All that stuff. Well, Alan, I'm just trying to think of anything else before I let you go. You've been generous with your time. Let's remind people TV is Good is the name of the podcast. That's every week with Catherine.
Every Monday.
And that is fun. Were you tempted at all to do, my podcast is more like this where I'm interviewing people. Was that something that you thought about before you teamed up on this project or?
I mean, the thing we've talked about, and we're going to have an episode like this in a month or so. The hope is eventually, we're only 5 weeks into this. So once we're a little more established, we do want to have guests. But specifically the way we want to have guests is we want to have them come on to talk about something about TV that they love. And so that's the idea. So we'll have actors and showrunners and executives and even other critics and friends of ours to come on and do a segment that way. When I was at the ATX Television Festival, I was interviewing Canada's own Tatiana Maslany about her Apple show, Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed. And at one point I said hey, I'm doing this podcast. Can I ask you about something in TV that you love? And I took out my phone and I made a voice memo of her talking about how much she loves Cheers. Yeah. And so that will be in the podcast sometime soon.
That's smart. Yeah, that's really that's the beauty of it is you can be that resourceful. If you have your phone and you can record, you can add that element. It's not like one thing you did. When you were reviewing every episode of The Sopranos, say, or it was like a magic trick. It seemed to be 20 minutes after the episode ended, there would be a book on it from Alan Sepinwall. I could never understand how you did such an incredible feat. But with podcasting, Alan, right? You don't have to worry about spelling, right? You can just talk, and that's the way to get all this information delivered in a very efficient way, right?
Yeah, I just have to worry about saying and and so and all of the other conversational fillers that I'm sure I've said 36 times over the course of this interview with you, Bill.
Well, nobody's counting. Everything else is really great, and if I had to keep track of that, wow. I remember the editors at the Canadian Press were just appalled at my spelling now and then. So I love the fact that that's no longer a problem. Anyway, Alan, thank you for your time. Keep watching TV and writing about it. Congrats on the Twilight Zone book. Again, people can go to What's Alan Watching and get all kinds of information about how to order that ahead of time.
Yes.
Anything else that you're working on that we've left out here that we should mention?
I've got a book about The Wire, which is coming out almost exactly a year from now, but that you can't pre-order yet. It's too far in advance of things. So that'll be like my Sopranos book and my Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul books. It'll be essays on every episode. So that I've turned in. I need to stop writing books for a while because it's kind of exhausting, but I love it. And the Serling book, I think, is maybe the thing I'm most proud of that I've ever written. So I hope people like it.
I'm enjoying it so far. I'm only about, you just sent it to me about 40 pages in, but I really am enjoying it. Was this
That's
book,
great, Bill.
And I'm just remind me, one of your books, you wrote it and you self-published, and then it sold so well, a publisher took it on, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah, that was The Revolution Was Televised, because I took it around initially and nobody wanted to buy it, or nobody wanted to buy it for enough money to be worth it.
Yeah.
And so I went and did these interviews on my own, and I self-published it, and the New York Times reviewed it, which I don't think they had ever done before for a self-published book.
Right.
And that day, my phone blew up, and, I sold it.
Well, that's heroic, really. Anybody who's writing a book nowadays is cheered to hear that, right? That's a cool story. So good for you, well deserved. But everybody, please get to What's Alan Watching, listen to his podcast, read his books, and thank you so much. Hope to see you again one of these days. I don't know if I'll ever get down to the ATX or whatever but it would be cool.
Maybe someday through some magic or science, the press tour will resume. But if not, I do get north of the border every now and then. And if I'm down your way, I will absolutely reach out, Bill.
Yeah,
I would love to see you.
Please do, Alan. We had a couple of guys, Neil from Minneapolis, came by last year, and we took him to. There's a great TV museum in Toronto. You would probably get intrigued by. So
I would love to. I haven't been there since I was like 3. So it's definitely it is time to return to Toronto.
All right, let's do it. Anyway, thanks a lot, Alan, and
thanks, Bill.
Continued success and go Knicks and all that stuff.
Let's go Knicks. Yeah.
Take it easy, man. My thanks once again to Alan Sepinwall, and if you haven't already, subscribe to his essential TV blog, What's Alan Watching, as well as the new podcast he does titled Yes, TV is Good. Plus, by all means, grab a copy of his new book, Serling, A Journey into the Twilight Zone, with TV's first visionary, available to pre-order now. Thanks as always to Phil Hong, who steers every episode of Brio TV, the podcast, through the Twilight Zone. Kudos to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudra, and Stephen Dudley for the music heard on this podcast. And finally, thanks to you, listener. If you liked what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.